Most people never plan to fail. They just never plan not to. Not clearly. Not fully. Not with the kind of conviction that leaves no back door. So they drift. Busy, but not building. Moving, but not rising. You've seen it. Days that feel full, but end empty. Promises made at midnight and broken by morning. The slow erosion of potential disguised as being realistic. But what if failure isn't a destination? What if it's a pattern? One that starts with small compromises and ends with a life unlived. And what if the cycle can be broken? Not with more willpower, but with one decision. This isn't a motivational boost. This is the mirror, the question, the moment where you stop making peace with almost and start escaping forever. Why most people fail, and how you can escape the cycle forever. Most people fail long before they know they've failed. It doesn't happen when they lose the job, or miss the opportunity, or give up on the dream. It happens quietly in the small, silent moments they thought didn't matter. It happens the morning they hit snooze and tell themselves it's just today. It happens the night they choose distraction over discipline, comfort over commitment, excuses over execution. And no one sees it. No one calls it out. But something inside of them shifts. Their standards soften. Their hunger dulls. And before they realize it, they've built a life around the very thing they swore they would change. Most people don't fall dramatically. They fail by default. They fail because they keep postponing the pain of action until it becomes the prison of regret. Failure isn't one big moment. It's a million micro-decisions, each one just a little easier to justify, just a little simpler to swallow. But you already know that. That's why you're here. You feel the gap not between where you are and where someone else is, but between who you are and who you could be if you finally stopped running from your potential. That tension you feel, that frustration, that is your power buried alive under patterns you didn't choose but have lived for too long. And if you want to break free, if you want to become the rare one who escapes the cycle, you have to start telling yourself the truth. Not the truth that's easy, the truth that burns, that you've allowed too many voices into your head, that you've waited too long for the perfect time, that you've built habits around hesitation and routines around relief. But the truth can set you free if you stop running from it and start using it. Because here's the thing, most people will never understand. Your failure is not final. It's fuel, but only if you face it with eyes wide open. The masses, they'll distract themselves from that mirror. They'll double down on comfort. They'll romanticize their potential, but never build the systems to see it through. They'll blame the economy, the market, their past, their parents, anything but their patterns, anything but the discipline they never developed. But you don't change your life by wishing for better circumstances. You change it by becoming a better operator, a better builder, a better decider of how you spend your minutes, because your minutes make your mission. And what's the root cause of failure for most people? Not ignorance, not lack of opportunity, not even lack of talent. It's the lack of clarity. A life lived without sharp definition is a life lived on autopilot. Most people don't fail because they aim too high and miss. They fail because they never aimed at all. They wander. They dabble. They float through one day to the next with no anchor, no structure, no blueprint. They confuse motion with movement. They work, yes, but not towards something. They're building, but they don't know what. And when you don't define the mission, the world will give you one by default. Consume, conform, complain, repeat. Look at history. The greats didn't stumble into greatness. They decided on it, then burned the alternative. Thomas Edison didn't invent the light bulb by browsing options. He failed over 10,000 times. But that wasn't failure, that was refinement. Carnegie didn't build an empire because he wanted comfort. He built because he was obsessed with growth, with production, with structure. Ford didn't become Ford by waiting for permission. He challenged the very system that said the automobile wasn't for the masses. What did all of them have in common? A clear target and a relentless refusal to stop adjusting until they hit it. That's what most people lack today. Not ambition, there's plenty of that, but defined ambition, rooted ambition, ambition with an address. When your ambition is vague, your actions are scattered. When your vision is blurred, your decisions are hesitant. And when your identity is undefined, the world will define it for you. Clarity is the starting line. Not confidence, not money, not inspiration. Clarity. Because once you know what you're here to build, your energy stops leaking. Your time stops bleeding. And your life becomes something that compounds. But clarity doesn't show up when you wait. It shows up when you move. It arrives when you cut the noise, when you turn off the endless opinions, the expert advice, the constant comparison, and ask yourself one brutal question: what do I want my life to actually stand for? Not what would impress people, not what's trending, not what makes sense on paper. What would make you proud to suffer for? Because once you answer that, you stop needing motivation. You don't need to feel like doing the work. You are the work. And that's when failure starts to disappear. Not because things get easier, but because you get clearer. You stop quitting after 3 days. You stop chasing convenience. You stop worshiping speed, and you start honoring depth. You realize real change doesn't come from sprinting. It comes from building rhythm, structure, ritual, discipline. The reason most people fail, they rely on emotion. They chase sparks. But transformation is not a spark. It's a system. And systems don't run on feelings. They run on commitment. Commitment doesn't ask how you feel. It asks what you decided. Commitment is what you do on the days you want to quit, especially on those days. Because every time you show up when it's hard, every time you follow through when the hype is gone, you add another brick to the structure of your identity. And identity, once locked in, is more powerful than any motivation you'll ever feel. You've been taught to chase emotion, to wait until it feels right, to search for signs, for perfect timing, for some cosmic green light that says, now you're ready. But that green light doesn't exist. And the longer you wait for it, the further your future drifts. The people who build legacies aren't the ones who had the most talent. They're the ones who moved when it was inconvenient, when it was terrifying, when it made no sense at all. They trained themselves to act without asking permission. Because success doesn't wait for clarity. Success creates clarity through motion, through resistance, through doing the thing even when the old you screams to run. And here's the brutal part. Most people will never do this, not because they're incapable, but because they've trained themselves to break at the first wall. They start a goal and expect it to feel good. They chase growth and expect it to be smooth. And the moment friction shows up, they misinterpret it as failure. But friction isn't failure. Friction is the forge. It's where the old identity burns. It's where the new one gets built rep by rep, choice by choice, refusal by refusal. Friction is your teacher. Most people run from it. But you, if you want to escape the cycle, you must run toward it. Every transformation has a moment that looks like defeat. That moment where everything feels slow, where you're tired, where the results haven't shown up, where no one notices your effort, and the voice in your head whispers, "What's the point?" That's the point. That moment, that is the test, not of your potential, of your decision. Because every person who changed their life had to pass that same test. The ones who built empires, legacies, movements, they weren't smarter. They were just quieter in the face of that voice. They didn't fight it. They moved through it. brick by brick, step by step, without needing applause. And the truth is, you already know what to do. You just haven't done it long enough, deep enough, consistently enough to see what it turns you into. This is where most people quit. They get bored. They get distracted. They get tempted by the next shiny thing. But transformation doesn't happen when you switch directions. It happens when you dig deeper into the one you're already on. You don't need a new plan. You need to stop abandoning the one that works every time you get uncomfortable. Failure loves distraction. It hides in the scroll, the constant input, the obsession with more. But the ones who escape the cycle, they get quiet, they simplify, they build routines so powerful that they don't need to rely on motivation. They rely on motion. They don't hope to feel productive. They architect a life where productivity is the default. And you don't build that kind of life overnight. You build it one habit at a time, 1 hour of deep focus, one clear block of creation, one decision to keep your word when it would have been easier to bail. That's how legacies are born, not with hype, but with honor. Honor to the future version of you who is counting on you to show up today. Honor to the standard you said you'd live by. Honor to the opportunity you were given the moment you woke up with breath in your lungs and potential in your hands. Most people treat potential like a trophy, something to admire. But it's not a trophy, it's a debt. And every day you don't use it, that debt compounds. Until one day it becomes regret. The kind that doesn't yell, it whispers. The kind that shows up at midnight and reminds you you could have been, but not you, not anymore. Because the fact that you're still here, still listening, still leaning in, that means something inside you is waking up. Not the part that wants motivation, the part that's done with the lie. The lie that says, you'll get to it later. It's too late. You're not ready. No, you are. You've always been. You just forgot. So let this be the day you remember. Let this be the hour you stop waiting for courage and start building it. Because courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the refusal to obey it. And when you stop obeying fear, everything changes. You speak differently, you move differently. You become the kind of person who doesn't flinch when life gets loud because you've built silence inside. That silence, that clarity, that is what most people never touch because they never stay long enough in the discomfort to find it. But you are different. Not because you're special, but because you chose to be. And that's all it ever was. A choice. Not talent, not timing, not luck. A decision. One that you remake daily. You don't drift into greatness. You don't stumble into discipline. You build it from the ground up with blood, sweat, clarity, and patience. So here it is, the fork in the road. Do what most people do, repeat the cycle. Or do what the greats did, escape it forever. You're not broken. You're buried. Buried under years of habits you didn't choose, narratives you didn't write, identities you inherited instead of forged. But beneath all of that, the procrastination, the doubt, the maybe later, is the same raw material that built empires. It's not missing. It's misused. And the moment you reclaim it, your entire trajectory changes. But you can't reclaim your power while living in distraction. You can't become unstoppable if you're constantly interrupted. That's why most people fail, not because they didn't have a vision, but because they couldn't protect it. You don't just need a goal. You need a container strong enough to hold your ambition. That container is made of discipline, boundaries, simplicity, structure. You want to know why the greats succeed. They didn't just set goals. They engineered their environments. They made it easier to win than to quit. They didn't try to find time. They built it, hour by hour, block by block, cutting what doesn't serve and pouring energy into what compounds. And that's the work. That's the part no one claps for. The part that doesn't look good on social media, but feels bulletproof in real life. Because when you live with rhythm, you don't need hype. You move automatically. You flow in a system that lifts you even when life tries to drag you. Most people will never feel that flow because they don't stay long enough in one direction to build it. They pivot too soon. They sabotage too early. They romanticize new and abandon effective. But if you want to escape the cycle forever, you must outlast your boredom. You must sit in the repetition long enough for the habits to click. You must let the mundane become the masterpiece. Because it's not the big leaps that change your life. It's the small ones done daily, over and over, until the compound effect becomes undeniable. Think about it. When did the spiral start? Not when you gave up, but when you compromised. Just once. One skipped workout. One snoozed alarm. One promise broken to yourself. And then another. And then another. Until you weren't sure if you could even trust your own word anymore. That's the price of inconsistency. It erodes your self-respect. And when that goes, everything else follows. You don't need another routine. You need to repair your relationship with your own word. That's the foundation. That's the reset. That's how you escape. By becoming the kind of person who believes themselves again. And how do you do that? You keep one promise, just one, no matter how small. You keep it not for the world, but for your identity. Because every time you follow through, you reclaim authority over your life. And every time you don't, you hand it away. The real battle isn't out there. It's inside. Between the version of you that leads and the version of you that loops. The one that builds and the one that browses. The one that creates. And the one that consumes. You want to win. You make the builder louder. You feed it with action. You silence the other with obedience to one principle. Decide once. Act daily. Adjust never. Most people can't do this because they think discipline is punishment. They think structure is suffocating. But they're wrong. Discipline is freedom. Structure is your fortress. Routine is what carries you when emotions fade and life throws punches. And life will throw them. You will get tired. You will feel lost. You will have setbacks, rejections, plateaus. But your rhythm, it becomes your rescue. It becomes the thing that keeps you moving when your mind says stop. That's the life you're building. That's the rhythm you're choosing. Because freedom isn't the absence of rules. It's having rules that serve your purpose and refusing to bend them for feelings. And here's the irony. Once you master this, once you build the machine, everything becomes easier. The mornings aren't battles. They're wins. The workouts aren't chores. They're anchors. The work blocks aren't noise. They're focus. You become the kind of person who doesn't wonder if they'll show up. They just do. Not because of pressure, because of pattern. Because this is who you are now. That's how you escape the cycle. You become someone else. And you don't need 10 years to do it. You just need 10 weeks of radical clarity and non-negotiable follow-through. That's how fast your life can change. That's how fast most people give up. But you're still here. And that tells me you're not most people. You've listened past the dopamine drop. You've pushed past the impulse to switch to skip, to save this for later. You're here because something inside you is ready. Not to try, not to test, but to transform. You don't want to feel better for a few minutes. You want to become undeniable. And the only way to do that is simple. You do what you said you'd do, until it's who you are. This is how you change. Not with noise, not with some overnight miracle, but with precision, with intentional repetition, with identity built through action. Because the old you doesn't die in one final battle. He dies slowly every time you refuse to act like him. Every time you get up when you used to stay down. Every time you choose deep work over distractions. Every time you stop negotiating with weakness. That's the real war. Not between you and the world, between you and the lesser version of yourself, the one who quit quietly and wore the smile of maybe later. But today, you end the negotiation. Today, you stop attending the pity party and start engineering the empire. Do you want to know what freedom feels like? It feels like never having to lie to yourself again. It feels like keeping your word in silence, not for applause, but because you've outgrown betrayal. You don't owe the world perfection, but you owe yourself consistency. Because every time you break a promise to yourself, you teach your nervous system that you're not reliable. And when you stop trusting yourself, nothing works. Your focus fractures, your fire weakens, and failure starts to feel familiar. But that can all change not by doing something heroic, but by doing the small thing, over and over, without compromise. The difference between those who rise and those who recycle their failure isn't complexity. It's commitment. The ones who rise, they keep showing up after the motivation wears off. They keep showing up when no one believes. They keep showing up when even they're not sure it's working. Because they understand that progress doesn't scream. It whispers. And if you're quiet enough, consistent enough, you'll hear it. In how you breathe, how you walk, how you start speaking with weight behind your words again. This is what it means to escape the cycle. You don't just do more. You become more. And yes, it will hurt. Yes, it will be lonely. Yes, people will misunderstand you when you stop showing up for average. But here's what no one tells you. Loneliness is not the price of growth. It's the filter. It's the clearing. It's what removes the noise and reveals who you are when you're not trying to please anyone. The truth is, most people can't stand that silence. That's why they fail. Because silence reveals how long they've been out of alignment. But not you. Because you're not here to escape discomfort, you're here to wield it. You're here to train under pressure until pressure feels like power. And when that happens, something shifts. You stop needing external rewards. You stop craving shortcuts. Because now you've tasted something deeper than pleasure, you've tasted peace. Not the kind that comes from escaping responsibility. The kind that comes from owning all of it. You look around and know this life, this discipline, this clarity. I built this, and no one can take that from you, because what you build internally becomes your armor externally. Do you want to be unshakable? Then build the inner world first, not with hype, with habits. You want clarity. Read, reflect, write. You want energy. Move your body like it's your duty. You want to guard your time like it's your kingdom. You want peace. Shut off the noise long enough to hear your own voice again. This isn't complicated, but it's uncomfortable. And that's why most people never do it. They want peace without pruning, power without pain, clarity without sacrifice. But the laws of growth don't bend for convenience. They bow only to the ones who obey the work. Let them scroll, let them talk, let them laugh at your new routines, your boundaries, your intensity. Because one day, those same people will say, I always knew you had it in you. But you'll know the truth. They didn't see the nights you worked in silence, the mornings you got up without applause, the hours you sat in stillness while the world begged for distraction. You'll know you didn't get lucky, you got deliberate. You made the choice to stop waiting and start building. And the world eventually made room for what you became. Success doesn't chase the loudest person. It chases the one with the clearest standards. The one who walks with internal gravity. The one who's already whole before the world gives permission. That's you now. Not because you're finished, but because you've decided to start as if you are already that person. That's the hack. That's the formula. Not fake it till you make it, but live today like the person you would be if you already had it. And in time, you will. You're not trying anymore. You're embodying. You're not hoping anymore. You're executing. You're not building confidence. You're building proof. And once you have proof, your brain stops questioning. You don't need to believe any more you know. That's the power of movement. That's the death of hesitation. That's the beginning of momentum. And momentum is the one force most people never get to feel because they quit in the silence before the shift. But you're past that now. You're not stuck, you're stacking. Every choice is a brick. Every habit is a wall. Every day you show up, that's one more reason your future self gets to breathe. So breathe. Not because you've arrived, but because you're aligned. You're not sprinting to escape anymore. You're building to become. And that is the rarest kind of peace. The kind that can't be purchased. The kind that can't be faked. The kind that comes only to the one who stayed long enough to rise. Most people live their lives negotiating with weakness. They don't even realize it. They call it self-care when it's self-sabotage. They call it balance when it's avoidance. They build entire belief systems around delay, then wonder why life feels heavy. But here's the truth. There is no weight heavier than the burden of untapped potential. And the only way to lighten it is to carry it forward. You want relief? Move. You want clarity? Decide. You want freedom? Earn it. You don't remove pressure by running. You remove it by rising above it. And to rise, you have to let go of who you've been. That version of you who needed perfect conditions. The one who needed constant reassurance. The one who needed the world to applaud before taking the first step. Let that version burn. Burn the version of you who quit at boredom, who mistook distraction for destiny, who called survival success just because they made it through another day, numbing their dreams. You are not here to survive. You are here to build. Not just a better schedule, not just a cleaner to-do list, but a new standard of being. Because here's the secret no one tells you. You don't rise when you accomplish the goal. You rise the moment you no longer tolerate your own excuses. That's the moment everything changes. That's the moment you stop lying to yourself. You stop calling procrastination a plan. You stop confusing comfort with progress. Most people will spend years stuck in loops that started as just one compromise, one missed promise, one day off with no makeup, one "I'll start next Monday." But you've been there. You know how that story ends. That's why this chapter must be different. You break the cycle by deciding that what used to be acceptable no longer is. That delay is no longer harmless. That wasted time is no longer neutral. That your goals are no longer optional. You stop operating from mood and start moving from mission. And your mission becomes sacred. You guard it with your time. You protect it with your energy. You defend it from every temptation that whispers it's fine. You've done enough, because enough is not the standard. Alignment is. And if your actions don't align with your future, they are betrayal. But here's the beauty. The moment you truly decide to act in alignment with the version of you who no longer fails, that version starts to become real. Not someday, not in theory, now. You'll notice it in how you move, how you show up to small tasks with full focus, how you speak with weight behind your words, how you no longer tolerate mediocrity in your habits, your thinking, or your circle. Because when you change your identity, the world adjusts. People will look at you differently. Some will be inspired. Some will be intimidated. Some will leave, and they should, because elevation requires separation. You can't rise while clinging to people who only know your former level. You can love them, but you must lead yourself. Because most people don't fail for lack of ambition. They fail from the fear of outgrowing what's familiar. They fear becoming unrelatable. They fear being misunderstood. But being understood by the wrong people has never been a requirement for greatness. Being committed to your evolution has. So let them misread your silence. Let them call your boundaries too intense. Let them wonder why you're not like you used to be. Because you're not. You're becoming. And becoming means shedding. It means killing off the patterns that once made sense. It means deleting the distractions that once felt comforting. It means choosing peace over popularity and growth over gossip. Most people will never do this, but you will. Not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. There's a moment in every transformation where the path gets lonely. Not because you're lost, but because you're no longer who you were and not yet who you're becoming. That's the in-between, the space where the work is invisible, where the habits are thankless, where you feel the weight but not the reward. And that is where most people fail, because they mistake invisibility for insignificance. But listen carefully. Just because the world hasn't seen it yet doesn't mean it's not working. Just because the results aren't viral doesn't mean they're not vital. The roots always grow before the fruit ever shows. And right now you are rooting, anchoring, solidifying a foundation so deep that the storms won't shake it later. So don't look for proof right now. Look for presence. Are you showing up? Are you aligned? Are you choosing the next right thing? Even when it's hard, because those are the seeds of greatness. And if you keep planting them, if you keep watering them with discipline, silence, and focus, you won't just escape failure. You'll become the blueprint for success. The kind of success that can't be faked, that doesn't need validation, that isn't built on sand or speed. The kind of success that walks into a room quietly and changes the energy not because it's loud, but because it's earned. And when you get there, when that version of you becomes your default, you'll realize something powerful. Failure was never the enemy. Failure was the invitation. It invited you to go deeper, to get honest, to build structure, to remember who the hell you are. And you answered it, not with noise, not with ego, but with discipline, with standards, with the decision to rise and never shrink again. You are not who you were. You've seen too much now. You've felt the shift, that crack in the surface of the old life. And through it, light came in. Not a blinding light, but a steady one. A signal. The world didn't change, you did. Not all at once, but one decision at a time. The decision to rise early. The decision to hold a promise. The decision to do it when you didn't feel like it. The decision to keep building even when the applause went silent. And those decisions have started to stack. Not as noise, but as weight. The kind of weight that gives your presence gravity. The kind of weight that can't be shaken because it's been earned. You've stepped into something most people never touch: self-command. You're not perfect. You're not always motivated. But you've trained something far more powerful than excitement. You've trained conviction. You've trained the quiet voice that says, "I do what I said I'd do." And that voice, that's the one that saves you. That's the one that keeps you moving when the old you would have collapsed under confusion. Because confusion is the currency of the masses. They trade in it like it's gold. They hide inside it. But you've stopped needing clarity to act. You act, and clarity follows. That's the paradox of power. Most people wait to understand their path, but the path only reveals itself to those who walk it. You don't become great by figuring everything out. You become great by refusing to sit still. Edison didn't find the answer first. He lit up the world because he moved through failure until success had no choice but to show itself. You want that kind of clarity? Then walk. 1 hour, one habit, one chapter, one deep work session at a time. Not for the dopamine, not for the scoreboard, but for the man or woman you promised to become. You want to know how to escape the cycle forever? You become your word, not your goals, not your intentions. Your word. You start treating your commitments like contracts. You stop explaining. You stop apologizing to weakness. You make discipline louder than discomfort. And when that happens, you don't need to tell people you're different, they'll feel it. You'll carry yourself differently. Your presence will shift. Your pace will sharpen. You'll enter rooms with a silence that speaks louder than most people's noise. Because a person who has mastered themselves doesn't shout, they signal. And the signal is unmistakable. It's in the way you move with urgency, but not panic. With precision, but not perfection. With presence, not performance. Because you're no longer acting out someone else's script. You're writing your own. And that's the most terrifying and liberating part of this whole journey. No one is coming. You are the writer. You are the builder. You are the authority now. Most people fail because they fear that kind of responsibility. They want the outcome, but not the ownership. They want success, but they need someone else to be at fault when it doesn't come. But you're done with that. You don't blame anymore. You build. You don't react. You architect. You don't scroll through other people's progress and call it inspiration. You log off, shut down the noise, and get to work. Because the longer you delay, the more your future pays. And that future, it's not some distant fantasy. It's already watching, already forming. And it's built brick by brick through what you do today. That's not pressure, that's power. The power to say, I don't chase ease anymore. I chase alignment. I chase depth. I chase the version of me who wakes up ready to own every room he walks into. Because he trained. Because she built. Because he didn't skip the hard days. Because she made herself undeniable before the world noticed. You want to be unshakable. Stop waiting for the world to crown you. Start crowning yourself with discipline, with action, with the quiet decision that today is the day. And then repeat it again tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after that, until identity takes over. Until failure is not a threat, it's a myth. Because when you're locked in, you don't fear losing. You don't fear failure. You fear only waking up one more day as someone you no longer respect. And that fear that's sacred. That's the kind of fear that fuels great builders, great leaders, great men and women who refuse to die with their power still buried inside them. You've buried yours long enough. It's time to unearth it. It's time to lead. Not the world, but yourself. Because the hardest person you will ever have to lead is the one in the mirror. But if you do that, you'll never have to follow again. So stop asking for motivation. It's not coming. Start becoming the kind of person who doesn't need it. Stop chasing clarity. Build it. Stop waiting to be discovered. Decide. Decide that this is who you are now, not someone who tries. Not someone who posts about change. Someone who builds it every single day. You've been told that failure is the end. But that's the lie. Failure isn't the end. It's the invitation. The mirror, the spark. It's not there to shame you. It's there to sharpen you, to ask, how bad do you want it? To strip away the fluff, to make sure your goals are built on commitment, not convenience. Most people see failure as a reason to quit. The rare ones, the builders, see it as data, as feedback, as refinement. They fail forward, not downward. They extract the lesson. Then they move smarter, stronger, cleaner, tighter. You will fail. And that's not just okay, it's necessary. The real tragedy is not failure. It's staying stuck in the shame of it. It's replaying your lowest moment like it defines your ceiling. But that low moment, that wasn't your limit. That was your level then. And this is now. Now you've got new eyes, new patterns, new boundaries. Now you've got clarity, built from collapse wisdom, built from wounds and discipline born in the dark. And those are the people the world underestimates, the ones who broke in silence and rebuilt in structure. You don't rise because it's fair. You rise because you've trained yourself not to need fair anymore. You rise because you've replaced emotions with execution. Because if you only move when you feel like it, you'll always move in circles. But you move because you said you would. And that alone already puts you in the top 1%. Because most people don't keep their word. Not to others, and definitely not to themselves. But not you. Not anymore. You've made too many promises. And now you're keeping them one rep, one block of deep work, one disciplined breath at a time. The ones who break cycles don't announce it. They don't post about the new version of themselves. They go quiet. They build when no one's looking. They sharpen while everyone else is scrolling. They simplify. And because they simplify, they compound. You're not going to win by doing more. You're going to win by doing less better. Cut the noise. Cut the negotiations. Cut the 5 half-built plans. Pick one. Go deep. Stay long. And master it until the results are so obvious no one can deny them, not even you. You're not behind. You're just distracted. Remove the distractions and your potential will roar. That's the truth. Your greatness isn't gone. It's just buried under too much access. Too many options, too many maybes you've mistaken for possibilities. But clarity kills maybe. Standards kill almost. And action kills everything that used to hold you back. Every day you execute, you're putting a tombstone on the habits that once buried your ambition. Every time you follow through, you leave the past version of you without oxygen. That's what this is. Not a reinvention. A resurrection. You're not building a new life. You're becoming the person who can no longer live in the old one. And that's not mindset fluff. That's reality. Because once you shift your standards, your systems, your identity, you won't need hype. You'll need silence. Because silence becomes sacred. It's where your best ideas live. It's where excuses die. It's where you meet yourself again, the real self, not the version diluted by distraction. The self that doesn't need motivation. The self that doesn't wait for energy. The self that creates it on command through structure. You want to become that version. Then build the rituals that build you. Don't wait to feel ready. Design your days as if you already are. Bookend your mornings and nights with intention. Guard your first hour like your life depends on it, because it does. Use it to feed your mind, challenge your body, build your dream. Don't let randomness start your day. And don't let overstimulation end it. You don't need more input. You need more stillness, more reps, more control, more solitude. That's what this next level requires. Not noise, not applause, just execution done in silence for the sake of becoming. The question isn't, can you do it? You already know you can. The real question is, will you stop running from the cost? Because the cost of transformation is discomfort, boredom, loneliness, tension. But the reward is knowing that you've built something unshakable, not with hacks, but with habits. Not with adrenaline, but with alignment. You've stopped performing for validation and started building for legacy. And that changes everything. Because legacy doesn't care how you feel. It cares how you move when no one's watching. It cares about your rhythm, your rituals, your refusal to let emotions dictate execution. Most people never get there because most people spend their whole lives preparing and never beginning. But you're not most people. You've stopped waiting. You've stopped asking for clarity from a future you're not even building. Now you're doing the hard thing. You're building first, then letting clarity catch up. You've stopped hoping for freedom. You've created it, not out there, in here. Freedom is not a location. It's an identity. It's what happens when you remove the distance between what you say and what you do. You want to stop failing. Then stop saying things you don't back up with action. Start becoming so reliable to yourself that you'd bet your future on it. Because the truth is, you already are. Every habit is a bet. Every routine is a contract. And every day you're either moving closer to power or closer to regret. There is no neutral. There is no neutral. Every choice is a signal. Every moment is a message to yourself about yourself. So ask yourself right now, what have I been telling myself through my patterns? Have you been reinforcing doubt by delaying action? Have you been feeding weakness by protecting comfort? Have you been voting for average with every skipped rep, every not today, every silent surrender? Or have you been writing a new script, one of follow-through, of focus, of fierce self-respect? Because you can lie to the world, but you can't lie to your soul. And when your actions betray your identity, your soul knows. It feels it in the silence, in the mirror, in the late nights where your potential stares back at you and asks, "Is this really it?" No, it's not. And that's why you're still here. You're not listening to this because you want motivation. You're here because you're done. Done shrinking. Done delaying. Done watching other people build what you know you're capable of but haven't claimed. And that changes today. Not with a shout, but with a shift. The shift from avoidance to ownership. From fear to fire. From waiting to working. Because this is the final form of power when your identity no longer allows you to sabotage yourself. And the only way to get there is through discipline. Not just daily discipline, relentless discipline, the kind that doesn't flinch, the kind that doesn't bend when it's tired, the kind that knows the cost of falling asleep on your purpose. Most people will live and die at the mercy of their moods. They'll convince themselves they need inspiration. But inspiration is a spark. Discipline is the furnace, and it burns long after the noise fades. You want momentum. Then build a furnace, one that runs on systems, on non-negotiables, on honoring the schedule long after you've forgotten the feeling. Because this is the truth most people never face. Your feelings have lied to you more than failure ever has. Your feelings said you're not ready. Your feelings said you're tired. Your feelings said you'll get back on track next week. But failure was honest. It told you exactly where you stood. It exposed what was weak. It revealed what wasn't real. And now you get to use it not to shrink, but to sharpen. You're not the person who failed. You're the person who learned. You're the one who didn't tap out when it got hard. You stayed. You listened. You adjusted. And now you lead. This is the beginning of your leadership. Not of others, of yourself. Because if you can't lead you, you'll never lead anything that lasts. And leading yourself means this. You stop entertaining your excuses. You stop debating your standards. You stop pretending like you're unsure when deep down, you've always known what needs to be done. You stop asking, "Can I do this?" And you start declaring, "This gets done because I said so." That voice, that power, that's been waiting for you. Buried under years of noise, fear, and scrolling. Buried under someday. Buried under borrowed beliefs and passive routines. But now the excavation is done. Now we build, with focus that scares people, with clarity that offends the lazy, with standards that feel unreasonable to anyone still addicted to average. Because when you decide to stop failing, you don't just shift what you do, you shift who you allow yourself to be. And the person you're becoming. They don't play small. They don't need reminders. They don't break their own promises. They walk with a code, a rhythm, a fire that doesn't scream, it simmers. And that fire is here now, right now, inside you, calling you back to the mission. Because you don't need more time. You need fewer distractions. You don't need more chances. You need one decision followed by relentless follow-through. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be glamorous. It just has to be real. One step, one block, one set, 1 hour of deep, undistracted work. Done daily. Done without apology. Done without needing hype to carry you through. Because when you train yourself to build in silence, you no longer need the world to cheer you on. You're not building for noise. You're building for proof. Proof that you are no longer like most people. Proof that you don't just talk about change. You live it. Most people will fail not because they couldn't win, but because they refuse to stick with anything long enough to let greatness take root. But roots are slow, they're silent. They demand stillness. They demand sacrifice. They demand the decision to stop planting new seeds every time it gets uncomfortable. But when the roots are deep, you become a force, unshakable, focused, free. So breathe. You're almost there, not to a destination, but to the real you. The one who doesn't fear hard work. The one who doesn't need rescue. The one who doesn't scroll to escape because you've built a life you no longer need to escape from. That's freedom, not money, not followers, not achievement. Freedom is looking in the mirror and finally recognizing who you see. A builder, a finisher, a leader, a force. You're not here by accident. This isn't just another video. It's not background noise. It's not entertainment. This is a moment. One of those rare, quiet moments when everything inside you aligns and whispers, "This is it." No more running. No more waiting. No more dressing up procrastination as planning. You've arrived at the fork in the road. And unlike every other time you've stood here, you're not turning back. You've seen what that costs: the regret, the doubt, the slow erosion of your own belief, watching your potential rot behind every "I'll start tomorrow." That version of you is dead. We're not saving him. We're not resuscitating her. We're replacing them with someone who acts faster than they hesitate, who builds faster than they doubt, who makes decisions that align with the future, not the feelings of the moment. Because the new you, the real you, doesn't need a pep talk. They need standards. You're not here to be hyped. You're here to be aligned. To build an internal system so strong it doesn't matter what happens around you. Because most people fail when the world shifts, when the mood drops, when the plan gets messy. But not you, not anymore. Because now you've stopped being dependent on your environment. You've started being defined by your execution. That's the difference. That's the exit. That's the jailbreak. You stop reacting. You start leading. And not the kind of leadership that needs an audience. The kind that starts in the dark, when no one's watching, when the results haven't come in yet, when it's just you, your breath, and your word. That's what you're building now, a life built on principle. Not pressure, not praise, just principle. Because when you act on principle, you're no longer a slave to momentum. You create it. And when you create momentum, failure becomes irrelevant. It might still show up, but it won't stop you. Because now you know how to move anyway. You've practiced showing up when it was boring, when it was inconvenient, when it wasn't exciting. And that practice has turned into identity. And identity is what most people never build. They chase outcomes, but they never become someone new. So they loop. They start strong. They fade. They blame. And then they start again, always hoping the next time will feel easier. But success doesn't get easier. You just get stronger. And strength is built here in the silence, in the structure, in the unseen reps. While others post, you build. While others compare, you focus. While others complain, you refine. You've stopped looking around and started looking within. And now you don't just move with intention. You move with conviction. Because you've made one final decision, the kind that doesn't fade, the kind that burns. You're done living in theory. You're done reading books and not applying them. You're done watching other people rise and pretending that next year is a plan. You've chosen the narrow road, and it's not crowded, but it's worth it. Because this road, this daily decision to show up, to do the work, to ignore the noise. This is the road where mastery is born. And when you master yourself, you become immune to failure. Not because it can't touch you, but because it can't define you. You've replaced perfection with precision. You've replaced inspiration with implementation. You've replaced fear with frameworks. That's why you'll win. Not because of your potential, but because of your pattern. And patterns are more powerful than promises. So let the world keep searching. Let them chase feelings. Let them wait for signs. You're not waiting anymore. You're building now. You're becoming now. Not at the next chapter. Not at the next milestone. Now. And that now, when lived consistently, becomes unstoppable. Because there's nothing more dangerous than a person who no longer needs to be convinced. A person who has burned the old script. A person who doesn't just hope they'll win, but knows they've already become someone who never leaves the arena. You're not chasing outcomes anymore. You're chasing alignment. You're not looking for breakthroughs. You are the breakthrough. Because the moment you stopped asking if you're ready and just started doing the work, everything changed. And now you move without friction. You execute without second-guessing. You build without burnout because your discipline has become your identity. This is the version of you they won't recognize. And they shouldn't. Because you didn't evolve to be accepted. You evolved to become undeniable. You are undeniable now. Not because the world says so, because you decided, because you committed, because you stopped outsourcing your greatness to circumstances, to timing, to permission. You gave yourself the one thing most people never do. A non-negotiable standard. And that standard, that silent line drawn in the sand, became your anchor. It turned chaos into clarity. It turned wandering into direction. It turned weakness into rhythm. Not by accident, by action. Relentless, steady, deliberate action. And now you don't rise because it feels good. You rise because it's who you are now. And that's the difference. Most people will keep searching for the moment they feel ready. You built a system that made readiness irrelevant. They'll scroll for inspiration. You'll rise in silence. They'll make another plan. You'll execute another rep. Because the gap between them and you is no longer talent. It's no longer knowledge. It's not even opportunity. It's identity. It's how you see yourself when no one's looking. And you now see yourself as the builder, the architect, the operator. You don't dabble. You decide. You don't try. You train. That's what they never taught you growing up. That success is not something you pursue. It's something you install. And you install it through daily proof. You stack the evidence. You log the work. You make your habits undeniable, and eventually, your confidence has no choice but to rise, because you don't fake it till you make it. You earn it till it's real. You don't speak with borrowed confidence anymore. You speak from battle scars, from cold mornings, from hard decisions, from silence, from the work no one saw but you remember. And in that remembering, you've become dangerous, not to the world, to failure, to hesitation, to every excuse that used to run your life. You don't entertain them anymore. You don't take their calls. You've outgrown the part of you that needed comfort. You replaced it with clarity. And clarity doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to ask. It moves with sharpness, with certainty, with presence. You've entered that rare state now, not motivated, moved, not hyped, honest, not rushing, ruthless. Because when you finally commit to escaping the cycle, you realize that it was never about fixing yourself. It was about finding yourself underneath all the noise. And what you found is a mind that doesn't flinch, a heart that doesn't fold, a will that doesn't bend. You don't need to finish everything in one day. You just never miss the day. You don't chase perfection. You refuse to disappear, and the world will feel it. They won't know what changed, but they'll feel the difference when you speak. When you walk into a room, when you show up with no hesitation, no excuse, no performance, because you're no longer waiting for conditions to be perfect. You've become unconditional. That's what this journey was always about, not goals. Governance, not hype, honor, not more, Mastery. You've crossed the line most people never even see, the line between the person who says I should and the one who says I do. You now live in alignment. You move from decision, not delay, from discipline, not emotion. You've become the kind of person who scares their old self because the old you never believed this level was possible. But it was. It always was. You just had to step through the fire to see it. You had to break the loop, to stop chasing the feeling, to build the framework. And you did. So now you don't need the screen. You don't need more words. You need execution. You need silence, stillness, action. Because you know exactly what happens next. You wake up tomorrow and you do it again. Not because you feel like it, because that's who you are now. The person who no longer fails, not because they're flawless, but because they don't stop. The person who escaped the cycle, not through force, but through focus. You don't need to prove anything anymore. You are the proof. So take the next breath, take the next rep, take the next hour and own it. Then stack the next one, and the next, until it becomes so natural, so automatic that the very idea of quitting feels foreign. Because you're not an amateur anymore. You're a builder, you're a closer, you're a leader. And every brick you lay now isn't just for you. It's for the people watching in silence. It's for the next version of you watching from the future saying, keep going. We're real now because you chose this moment. So choose again. Choose now. Choose to finish strong. Not someday, today. And if the voice ever comes back, the one that says you're not enough, you'll fall off. You failed before. You say this, that's true, I have. But that version of me doesn't live here anymore. You are undeniable now. Not because the world says so, because you decided, because you committed, because you stopped outsourcing your greatness to circumstances, to timing, to permission. You gave yourself the one thing most people never do, a non-negotiable standard. And that standard, that silent line drawn in the sand, became your anchor. It turned chaos into clarity. It turned wandering into direction. It turned weakness into rhythm. Not by accident, by action. Relentless, steady, deliberate action. And now you don't rise because it feels good. You rise because it's who you are now. And that's the difference. Most people will keep searching for the moment they feel ready. You built a system that made readiness irrelevant. They'll scroll for inspiration. You'll rise in silence. They'll make another plan. You'll execute another rep. Because the gap between them and you is no longer talent. It's no longer knowledge. It's not even opportunity. It's identity. It's how you see yourself when no one's looking. And you now see yourself as the builder, the architect, the operator. You don't dabble, you decide, you don't try, you train. That's what they never taught you growing up. That success is not something you pursue. It's something you install, and you install it through daily proof. You stack the evidence. You log the work. You make your habits undeniable, and eventually, your confidence has no choice but to rise because you don't fake it till you make it. You earn it till it's real. You don't speak with borrowed confidence anymore. You speak from battle scars, from cold mornings, from hard decisions, from silence, from the work no one saw but you remember. And in that remembering, you've become dangerous. Not to the world, to failure, to hesitation, to every excuse that used to run your life. You don't entertain them anymore. You don't take their calls. You've outgrown the part of you that needed comfort. You replaced it with clarity. And clarity doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to ask. It moves with sharpness, with certainty, with presence. You've entered that rare state now, not motivated, moved, not hyped, honest, not rushing, ruthless. Because when you finally commit to escaping the cycle, you realize that it was never about fixing yourself. It was about finding yourself underneath all the noise. And what you found is a mind that doesn't flinch, a heart that doesn't fold, a will that doesn't bend. You don't need to finish everything in one day. You just never miss the day. You don't chase perfection. You refuse to disappear, and the world will feel it. They won't know what changed, but they'll feel the difference when you speak, when you walk into a room, when you show up with no hesitation, no excuse, no performance, because you're no longer waiting for conditions to be perfect. You've become unconditional. That's what this journey was always about, not goals. Governance, not hype. Honor, not more. Mastery. You've crossed the line most people never even see, the line between the person who says I should and the one who says I do. You now live in alignment. You move from decision, not delay. From discipline, not emotion. You've become the kind of person who scares their old self because the old you never believed this level was possible. But it was. It always was. You just had to step through the fire to see it. You had to break the loop, to stop chasing the feeling, to build the framework. And you did. So now you don't need the screen. You don't need more words. You need execution. You need silence, stillness, action. Because you know exactly what happens next. You wake up tomorrow and you do it again. Not because you feel like it, because that's who you are now, the person who no longer fails. Not because they're flawless, but because they don't stop. The person who escaped the cycle, not through force, but through focus. You don't need to prove anything anymore. You are the proof. So take the next breath. Take the next rep. Take the next hour and own it. Then stack the next one, and the next, until it becomes so natural, so automatic, that the very idea of quitting feels foreign. Because you're not an amateur anymore. You're a builder. You're a closer. You're a leader. And every brick you lay now isn't just for you. It's for the people watching in silence. It's for the next version of you watching from the future saying, keep going. We're real now, because you chose this moment. So choose again. Choose now. Choose to finish strong. Not someday, today. And if the voice ever comes back, the one that says you're not enough, you'll fall off. You've failed before. You say this, that's true, I have. But that version of me doesn't live here anymore. The old version of you doesn't live here anymore. Let that land. Let it echo. You didn't outgrow them by accident. You outworked them. You outdecided them. You stopped feeding the patterns that kept them alive. And without attention, they withered. That's the hidden truth about transformation. It's not about becoming something new. It's about letting go of what never belonged to you in the first place. The doubt, the fear, the hesitation. Those weren't yours. They were inherited, taught, repeated. But now finally you've stopped repeating them. And in their place, you've built something unshakable. What do you call a man or woman who keeps their word no matter what? You call them rare. You call them dangerous. You call them free. Free from the patterns. Free from the loops. Free from the story that said, this is just who you are. No, it's not. That was who you tolerated. This what you're building now, this is who you are. And don't let the world rush you. Don't let noise steal your pace. This kind of freedom takes time, but it lasts. It doesn't fade when the season changes. It doesn't collapse when life gets hard, because it was never built on hype. It was built on truth. And the truth is, you don't rise by becoming someone else. You rise by becoming undeniably yourself, stripped of excuses, aligned with purpose, anchored in execution. That version of you has been waiting, not on the outside, on the inside, in the stillness, in the silence, in every moment you almost quit but didn't. And now it's time to step fully into them, to live as them, not when it's convenient, not when you're motivated, but every single day, because that's what it means to lead. You go first, without applause, without shortcuts, without loopholes. You go first, and when you do, everything shifts. Your thoughts follow. Your actions align, your environment bends, and eventually, your life becomes a mirror of your new standard. And the people around you, they'll feel it, even if they can't explain it. Because when a person becomes undeniable, it's not just their results that speak. It's their presence, their stillness, their clarity, the calm confidence of someone who's already won the hardest battle, the one with themselves. That's who you are now. You don't chase anymore. You call. You command. You move like someone who knows how much it cost to finally believe in themselves again. And because of that, you don't go back. There's no return to the average life. There's no reset button on identity. Once you've seen yourself operate with full integrity, once you've followed through when no one was watching, once you've proven to yourself that you can rise without external fuel, you never again mistake distraction for peace. You've built something better. You've built discipline, born peace, the rare kind, the real kind. So here's the final truth. You're not like most people, and you never were. You just forgot for a while. But now you remember. You remember what it feels like to move with conviction, to show up with clarity, to be unavailable for excuses. And that makes you dangerous, not in a loud way, but in a focused, rooted, immovable way. The kind of person who doesn't crumble. The kind of person who doesn't chase credit. The kind of person who doesn't need the world to get it because you get it. You've seen what's possible. You've seen who you can become. And that vision is now your minimum standard. You're no longer trying to succeed. You've become the kind of person who does. It's not a goal. It's a rhythm. It's not something you do. It's who you are. And that is what separates you now. Not your past, not your resume, not your talent, your standards, your refusal to tolerate anything less than the identity you've chosen. Not once, not in moments, but every single day without negotiation. And because of that, you'll never go back. You won't need to, because from now on, your future isn't something you fantasize about. It's something you're compounding. With every focused hour, with every boundary protected, with every time you rise without needing to be reminded. You're not hoping anymore. You're walking it. You're wearing it. You've become it. And nothing, no opinion, no setback, no noise can take that away. Because they didn't build it. You did. Brick by brick, decision by decision, day by day in silence, with standards, with spine, with stillness. And now, you lead. You don't need a stage. You don't need a title. You lead because you've mastered the hardest thing any human can ever master. Yourself. So go, and don't say a word. Let your energy speak. Let your actions echo. Let your results create a silence that's louder than any doubt ever was. And if someone asks what changed, you don't need to explain. Just say, I stopped failing the moment I stopped pretending I was powerless. Most people won't make it to this point, not because they couldn't, but because they stopped listening when the message got too close. But you're still here, and that means something. Not about the video, about you. You've heard enough advice, enough hype, enough noise. Now it's time to do the one thing most people never will decide. Not tomorrow. Not when it's easy. Now. Quietly. Unshakably. You already know what to cut. You already know what to commit to. And you already know who you need to become to break the cycle for good. So close this tab, shut the door, and let the next hour speak for you. Because the people who escape the cycle don't talk about change. They become it.